The evening light faded through the tall windows of the Metropolitan Chess Club as Meera Patel moved quietly between the tables. Her hands worked with practiced efficiency, dusting the empty chess tables and straightening chairs that the day's players had left askew. The soft clinking of her cleaning supplies provided a gentle backdrop to the intense silence that hung over the few remaining games still in progress. Meera had been cleaning at the club for 3 years now. 3 years of watching some of the best chess players in the city battle it out across checkered boards while barely noticing her existence. She preferred it that way. The invisible woman who swept away coffee cups and sandwich crumbs after intense matches where minds clashed in silent combat. The club itself was housed in an old building with dark wood paneling and heavy curtains that spoke of tradition and privilege. Memberships cost more than Meera earned in 2 months, and the players who frequented the place wore expensive watches and tailored suits. To them, she was just part of the furniture, less interesting than the carved wooden chess pieces they moved with such confidence. But Meera watched. She always watched. While wiping down tables, she'd pause for moments to observe a particularly interesting position. While emptying trash bins, she'd catch glimpses of brilliant sacrifices or clever defenses. Chess had its own language, and after 3 years of silent observation, Meera had become fluent without anyone realizing she was even listening. Tonight, the main hall was nearly empty, except for a group of 4 businessmen playing at a corner table. Their voices had grown louder as the evening progressed, their laughter more boisterous with each round of drinks brought from the club's bar. Meera kept her distance until she absolutely needed to clean nearby, knowing from experience that men, with expensive suits and alcohol in their systems, rarely acknowledged her humanity. "Your move, Lawrence," said one of the men, leaning back in his leather chair with a smug expression. "Though I don't see how you're getting out of this one." The man called Lawrence, thin-faced with silver streaks in his dark hair, studied the board with narrowed eyes. His fingers drummed impatiently on the table edge as he considered his position. Meera could see even from her peripheral vision that he was in trouble. His king was exposed, his defensive structure broken. As she carefully swept around a nearby table, she couldn't help but glance at Lawrence's position. His knight could move to block the attack, setting up a defensive position that might give him breathing room. It seemed so obvious to her, but Lawrence was looking everywhere else on the board. "Some of us would like to finish before midnight," said another man, checking his gold watch with exaggerated impatience. Lawrence finally moved, his bishop instead, a mistake that Meera instantly recognized. She must have made some small sound of surprise because suddenly all 4 men were looking at her. "Is there a problem?" Lawrence asked coldly. Meera shook her head quickly. "No, sir, sorry, sir, just cleaning." But it was too late. Lawrence's opponent made the killing move, sliding his rook across the board with a flourish. "Check and mate, my friend." Lawrence's face flushed red. He stared at the board in disbelief before suddenly sweeping his arm across it, sending pieces flying. One knight landed near Meera's feet. "This is ridiculous," Lawrence snapped. "I can't concentrate with people hovering around watching and judging." He pointed at Meera. "She's been circling the table like a vulture, distracting me." Meera bent down quickly to pick up the fallen chess piece. "I'm very sorry, sir. I'll come back later." "No, wait." Lawrence's voice took on a different tone, one that made Meera's stomach tighten with unease. He was looking at her now, really looking at her for perhaps the first time. "Our cleaning lady seems very interested in our game. Perhaps she'd like to show us how it's done?" The other men laughed, the ugly sound of people enjoying someone else's humiliation. "Oh yes," said the man with the gold watch. "Let's see the expert at work." Meera clutched her broom tighter. "I need to finish my work, sir." "Your work can wait," Lawrence said, his voice carrying the absolute certainty of someone who had never been told no. "I insist." One of the other men, younger than the rest with a kinder face, looked uncomfortable. "Come on, Lawrence. Leave her alone." "What's the matter, Tom? Afraid our cleaning lady might be the next chess champion?" Lawrence began resetting the pieces on the board. "I'm curious now. Let's see what she can do." The club manager, Mr. Phillips, a stout man with a perpetual frown, approached the table. "Is there a problem here, gentlemen?" Not at all, Lawrence said smoothly. We're just inviting your employee to join us for a friendly game. No harm in that, is there? Mr. Phillips looked at Mira with concern. Ms. Patel doesn't have to. It's fine, Mira said quietly, surprising herself. Something in Lawrence's mocking tone had touched a nerve she thought long buried. She set down her cleaning supplies carefully against the wall. I can play one game. The silence that followed her words felt heavier than before. Several other club members who were preparing to leave paused to watch the unusual scene unfolding. Well, Lawrence said, smiling in a way that didn't reach his eyes. This should be entertaining. He gestured to the chair across from him. Please, have a seat. Mira sat down stiffly, her work uniform making her feel even more out of place against the leather chair and polished wood table. Her hands, rough from years of cleaning chemicals, hovered uncertainly over the white pieces. Oh, I'll even give you a handicap? Lawrence announced loudly, removing his queen from the board and setting it aside with a theatrical flourish. Several onlookers gasped at the arrogance of the gesture. Giving up a queen was an insult, suggesting he could win without his strongest piece. And if you somehow manage to beat me, he continued, I'll give you my membership to this fine establishment. His friends chuckled appreciatively. Mira said nothing. She simply straightened the pieces on her side, making sure each one was perfectly centered in its square. Her hands, which had been slightly trembling, grew steady as she touched the familiar shapes. Lawrence made his opening move with a dismissive flick, pawn to e4. A standard opening, aggressive and confident. Mira responded not by moving a pawn as most would expect, but by developing her knight to f6, an unusual first move that caused one of the older club members watching from nearby to raise his eyebrows. Interesting choice, he murmured to no one in particular. Lawrence smirked and moved quickly, clearly not taking the game seriously. Mira responded with quiet moves, each one careful and considered. She didn't rush, didn't show emotion. But with each move, her knight began to control more of the center board, creating threats that Lawrence initially didn't see. After 15 minutes, Lawrence was no longer smirking. His forehead had developed a slight sheen of sweat, and he was taking much longer to consider his moves. The knight that Mira had moved first had become a thorn in his position, threatening multiple pieces at once. Where did you learn to play? He asked abruptly, trying to sound casual as he moved his bishop to safety. Mira didn't answer immediately. She studied the board, her dark eyes reflecting the positions like still water. Finally, she moved her second knight to create a devastating fork, threatening both Lawrence's rook and his king simultaneously. My grandfather taught me, she said, softly. When I was young, the club had grown quieter. More people had gathered to watch, sensing something unusual happening. Mr. Phillips stood nearby, his earlier concern replaced by fascination. Even the bartender had paused in his work to observe. Lawrence's face had lost its superior expression. He stared at the board with growing dismay, seeing threats multiply with each of Mira's precise moves. Her knights seemed to dance across the board in patterns he struggled to predict, working together in a coordinated attack that was as beautiful as it was deadly. Check, Mira said quietly, moving her knight again. Lawrence moved his king to the only safe square. Mira immediately moved her other knight. Check, she said again. The older club member who had noticed her first move leaned forward, his eyes wide. My God, he whispered. Lawrence's friends were no longer laughing. One of them, Tom, was watching Mira with undisguised admiration. Who are you? He asked. Before Mira could answer, Lawrence knocked over his king in resignation. The symbolic surrender brought a hushed murmur from the gathered crowd. This is absurd, Lawrence said, his voice tight. You must have cheated somehow. That's enough, Lawrence, said the older club member, stepping forward. I watched every move. The young lady beat you fair and square, and without your queen, handicap, it would have been over even sooner. Mira stood up, smoothing down her uniform. Thank you for the game, she said politely. I should get back to work now. As she reached for her cleaning supplies, Tom stopped her. Wait, that was incredible. Where did you learn to play like that? Mira hesitated, uncomfortable with the attention now focused on her. Like I said, my grandfather taught me. A long time ago. Lawrence pulled out his wallet and extracted a card. A deal's a deal, he said stiffly, holding out his membership card. Though I don't see how they'll let a cleaner become a member. Mr. Phillips cleared his throat. Actually, our bylaws state that new members can be admitted based on demonstrated skill at the game, regardless of their background. Something flickered in Mira's eyes. A brief light quickly extinguished. She looked at the membership card, then at her cleaning cart. Keep your card, she said, picking up her broom. I didn't play for that, as she walked away to continue her work, leaving the crowd of chess players staring after her in amazement. No one noticed the slight tremble that had returned to her hands, or the way she blinked rapidly to clear her suddenly misty eyes. No one except Tom, who watched her go with a thoughtful expression before turning to Mr. Phillips. Who exactly is she? He asked quietly. Just our cleaning woman, Mr. Phillips replied, but his tone suggested he was no longer certain of that fact. At least, that's all I thought she was until tonight. Word spread quickly through the Metropolitan Chess Club about the cleaning woman who had defeated Lawrence Finch, a man who, despite his arrogance, held a respectable club rating. By the next evening, when Mira arrived for her shift, she could feel the difference in how people looked at her. No longer invisible, she now drew curious glances and whispered conversations that fell silent when she came near. Mira kept her head down as she worked, trying to ignore the attention. She had come to value her invisibility over the years. It had been a kind of shield, allowing her to be near the game she loved without the complications that came with being seen. Now that shield was gone, and she wasn't sure she was ready for what might follow. Ms. Patel. Mr. Phillips approached her as she was cleaning the restrooms. His usual stern expression had softened somewhat. When you finish here, could you come to my office? There's something I'd like to discuss with you. Mira nodded, her stomach tightening with worry. Had she crossed some line by playing against a member? Was her job in danger? She needed this work, the steady paycheck, the predictable hours that left her mornings free to care for her elderly grandmother. When she knocked on Mr. Phillips's office door 30 minutes later, she was surprised to find she wasn't alone for the meeting. Tom, the younger businessman from the previous night, was there too, along with an older man she recognized as Wei Zheng, one of the club's most respected players. Please sit down, Mr. Phillips said, gesturing to an empty chair. Mira perched on the edge of the seat, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Have I done something wrong? Wrong? Quite the opposite, Mr. Zhang said with a gentle smile. You've done something remarkable. I hope you don't mind that I asked Mr. Zhang and Mr. Reeves to join us, Mr. Phillips said. They have a proposition for you. Tom Reeves leaned forward. I haven't been able to stop thinking about your game last night. That knight maneuver you used. I've only seen something similar in games played by grandmasters. It was just a game, Mira said softly. Mr. Finch wasn't playing his best. Mr. Zhang shook his head. I've played Lawrence many times. He's skilled, if overconfident. What you did wasn't luck or his poor play. It was brilliant chess. The thing is, Mr. Phillips continued, we have a club tournament coming up next month. And we're also starting a new youth program trying to bring chess to kids from all backgrounds. Mira looked between the three men, confused about where this conversation was heading. Tom smiled at her confusion. We'd like you to consider taking a different position here at the club, as a coach, specifically for the youth program, and, if you're willing, as a player representing the club in the tournament. The offer hit Mira like a physical blow. Memories she had carefully kept locked away for years threatened to surface. The feel of tournament clocks, the weight of official chess pieces, the pressure of eyes watching every move. I can't, she said, standing up abruptly. I'm sorry, but I'm not a player anymore. I just clean here. But you clearly have extraordinary talent, Mr. Zhang said, bewilderment in his voice. I appreciate the offer, truly. But I'm happy with my current position. Mira backed toward the door. May I go now? I have work to finish. Mr. Phillips sighed but nodded. Of course. But Ms. Patel, the offer remains open. Please think about it. Mira fled the office, her heart pounding. She worked through the rest of her shift mechanically, grateful that the late hour meant fewer members to navigate around. As she was preparing to leave, she found Tom waiting by the employee exit. I didn't mean to upset you earlier, he said. As she approached, Mira adjusted her worn backpack on her shoulder. You didn't. That part of my life is over. Mind if I walk with you to the bus stop? It's late. She hesitated, then nodded. They walked in silence for a block before Tom spoke again. I looked you up, you know. There aren't many Patels who play chess at your level. Mira's steps faltered slightly. I couldn't find anything, Tom continued. Which is strange for someone with your ability. Maybe I'm not as good as you think. Or maybe you play under a different name. Mira stopped walking. Why does it matter? To you? Tom paused, considering his answer. Because talent like yours shouldn't be wasted mopping floors. And because those kids in our new program, kids who can't afford fancy chess tutors or expensive clubs, they could use someone like you. Someone who understands that chess isn't just for people in tailored suits. They had reached the bus stop. Mira's bus was already approaching. Think about it, Tom said. Just think about it. The bus ride home was a blur. Mira's mind was filled with memories she had tried so hard to forget, the thrill of competition, the beautiful patterns of a well-played game, the pride in her grandfather's eyes when she won her first junior tournament. Her grandmother was asleep when Mira entered their small apartment. She moved quietly to avoid waking her, making herself a cup of tea before sitting at their small kitchen table. From a drawer beneath the sink, she pulled out a worn chess set, its pieces made of simple plastic, nothing like the hand-carved wooden sets at the club. With practiced hands, she set up the board and recreated the position from her game with Lawrence. She moved through the game from memory, seeing again the surprise on his face when her knights began their coordinated attack. Chess had always made sense to her in a way that little else did. On the board there were rules. Consequences followed actions in a logical way. Unlike life, where tragedy could strike without warning or reason, a soft shuffling sound made her look up. Her grandmother stood in the doorway, her thin frame wrapped in a faded robe. You're playing again, she said in Hindi, her native language. It wasn't a question. Just remembering a game, Mira replied in the same language. Her grandmother moved slowly to sit across from her. Her gnarled hands reached out to touch one of the knights. Your grandfather's favorite piece. The trickster, he called it. Mira smiled despite herself. Because it's the only one that can jump over others. He would be happy to see you play again. I'm not playing again, Nani. It was just one game. Her grandmother studied her face with eyes that, despite her age, missed very little. For 10 years you've blamed chess for what happened. But chess did not cause the accident, Beta. A drunk driver did. Mira looked away. If grandfather hadn't been taking me to that tournament, then perhaps the drunk driver would have hit someone else. Or no one. Her grandmother's voice was gentle but firm. You cannot carry this guilt forever. They sat in silence for a moment, the chess pieces between them like silent witnesses to an old argument. A man at the club offered me a different job today, Mira finally said. Teaching chess to children. Her grandmother's face brightened. That would be good. Very good. I said no. Why? Mira gestured helplessly at their surroundings. The small apartment, the bills stacked on the counter. We need the money from my cleaning job. It's steady, safe. Safe, her grandmother repeated, a hint of disappointment in her voice. Your grandfather did not teach you chess so you could be safe. He taught you so you could soar. The next morning, Mira arrived at the club earlier than usual. Most days she started her shift after the club closed, cleaning through the night when she wouldn't disturb the members. But today, she had a purpose. she found Mr. Phillips in his office, already reviewing applications for the youth program. "I have conditions," Mira said without preamble when he looked up. Mr. Phillips blinked in surprise. "4? The coaching position. I'll do it, but I have conditions." A smile spread across his face. "I'm listening. I keep my cleaning job too, at least for now. I need the steady income. I coach in the mornings before my shift." She took a deep breath. "And I don't play in the tournament. Not yet. Maybe someday, but not now." Mr. Phillips considered her terms. "The cleaning and coaching schedule can be arranged. As for the tournament," he sighed, "it's a missed opportunity, but I understand. We'll revisit it when you're ready." "One more thing," Mira added. "No one asks about my past, where I learned, why I stopped. Those stories are mine to share if and when I choose." "Agreed." Mr. Phillips stood and offered his hand. "Welcome to your new position, Ms. Patel." As they shook hands, Mira felt something shift inside her, as if a piece that had been out of place for years had finally moved to where it belonged. That afternoon, she sat in on her first youth program session, observing from the back as Mr. Zhang taught basic openings to a group of children from local schools. Their faces lit up with each new concept they grasped, their small hands moving pieces with growing confidence. When a young girl with bright eyes and a determined expression struggled with understanding how knights move, Mira found herself walking over before she could think twice. "The knight is special," she said, kneeling beside the girl. "It doesn't move in straight lines like the others. It makes an L shape, like this." She demonstrated the move. "And it's the only piece that can jump over others." "Like a horse jumping a fence?" the girl asked. Mira smiled. "Exactly like that." As the girl practiced the move with growing excitement, Mira caught Mr. Zhang watching her with approval. Tomorrow would be her first official day as a coach. The thought filled her with both terror and a strange, almost forgotten feeling that took her a moment to identify. Hope. 2 weeks into her role as a chess coach, Mira discovered something unexpected. She loved teaching. Each morning she worked with groups of children from the youth program, their eager faces and endless questions bringing a new kind of joy to her days. She found herself looking forward to their sessions, planning lessons carefully the night before, thinking about how to explain complex concepts in ways young minds could grasp. "The board tells a story," she explained to her students one morning. "Each piece has its own voice, its own way of moving through the world. Your job is to help them work together to tell the story you want to tell." Lily, the bright-eyed girl who had struggled with knight moves, raised her hand. "But what if the other player doesn't let you tell your story?" Mira smiled. "That's what makes chess beautiful. 2 stories happening at once, each trying to become the main one. The best players can read both stories at the same time." From the doorway, Mr. Zhang watched with approval. After the children left, he approached Mira. "You have a gift for teaching," he said. "You make chess come alive for them." Mira busied herself resetting the boards. "They make it easy. They're so eager to learn." "The club tournament starts next week," Mr. Zhang mentioned casually. "Several members have asked if you'll be playing." Mira tensed. "I told Mr. Phillips I wouldn't." "Yes, he mentioned your conditions." Mr. Zhang picked up a knight, turning it thoughtfully in his fingers. "But conditions can change. Minds can change." "Mine hasn't," Mira said firmly. Mr. Zhang placed the knight back on the board with a gentle click. "Did you know that I stopped playing for 7 years? After I lost the Beijing Regional Championship in 1983, I put my pieces away. I told myself I was done." This caught Mira's attention. "What brought you back?" "I saw a young boy playing in a park. He had set up his board all wrong. The bishops were where the knights should be, the king and queen reversed. But the joy on his face as he played." Mr. Zhang's eyes grew distant with the memory. "I realized I had punished myself long enough for one defeat. I was denying myself joy." He met Mira's gaze directly. Whatever happened in your past, and I respect your wish not to discuss it, ask yourself if you're denying yourself joy. Before Mira could respond, the club door opened and several members entered for their morning games. Among them was Lawrence Finch, who had avoided the club during Mira's morning shifts since their match. He stopped short when he saw her. "Ms. Patel," he acknowledged stiffly. "I hear you're coaching the children now." "Yes," Mira replied, equally formal. An uncomfortable silence stretched between them, until Mr. Zhang smoothly intervened. "Lawrence, perhaps you'd care to observe one of Ms. Patel's sessions sometime. Her teaching methods are quite innovative." Lawrence's expression suggested he'd rather drink motor oil, but years of social training forced politeness. "Perhaps." After an awkward moment, he continued to his usual table where his friends waited. Mira could feel their eyes on her as she gathered her things to leave. "Ignore him," Mr. Zhang advised quietly. "Some people take longer to adjust their view of the world." Mira nodded and headed to the employee room to change for her cleaning shift. As she tied back her hair and put on her work uniform, she felt the familiar comfort of returning to her invisible role. Despite enjoying teaching, part of her still preferred the safety of cleaning, the straightforward tasks, the lack of scrutiny. That evening, as Mira finished her shift, she found Tom waiting by the exit again. In the past 2 weeks, he had made a habit of walking her to the bus stop after her late shifts, their conversations gradually becoming the highlight of her long days. "How was class today?" he asked as they fell into step together. "Good. The kids are starting to understand basic tactics. Lily even set up a simple fork today." Tom smiled. "You light up when you talk about teaching them." Mira felt her cheeks warm. It's rewarding to see them learn. They walked in comfortable silence for a block before Tom spoke again. "The tournament committee met today. There's still time to enter if you change your mind." Mira shook her head. "You too?" Mr. Zhang was pushing the same thing this morning. "Great minds think alike," Tom said with a grin. "But seriously, you'd be amazing." "I'm not ready," Mira said softly. "Maybe I'll never be ready." Tom stopped walking, turning to face her. "Can I ask you something personal?" Mira tensed but nodded. "Does not playing make the pain, whatever it is, any less?" The question hit her like a physical blow. She started walking again, faster now. "You don't understand." "You're right, I don't," Tom agreed, keeping pace. "Because you won't let anyone in. But I've seen how you look at the boards, Mira. Like someone looking at a home they've been exiled from." They reached the bus stop in silence. Mira's bus was approaching. "I lost someone," she said suddenly, the words spilling out before she could stop them. "My grandfather. He taught me chess, believed in me when no one else did. He was driving me to a tournament when..." She swallowed hard. "A drunk driver hit us. He died. I walked away without a scratch." Tom's face softened with understanding. "I'm so sorry. The tournament was my idea. He was tired that day, but I insisted." The bus pulled up, doors opening. "So no, playing doesn't make the pain less. It makes it worse." She boarded the bus quickly, leaving Tom standing on the sidewalk, his expression troubled. That night, Mira couldn't sleep. Tom's question echoed in her mind. Does not playing make the pain any less? The truth was, it didn't. The guilt remained, a constant companion whether she touched chess pieces or not. All she had accomplished by stopping was to deny herself the one thing that had once brought her pure joy. The next morning, she arrived at the club to find an unexpected visitor waiting for her students, Lawrence Finch. "Mr. Phillips said I could observe today," he explained stiffly when she raised her eyebrows in question. "Of course," Mira said, hiding her surprise. "We're working on tactical awareness today." As the children arrived and settled at their boards, Mira began her lesson. Acutely aware of Lawrence watching from the corner, she demonstrated a classic knight fork on the demonstration board, showing how a single piece could threaten two valuable targets simultaneously. "The knight is tricky," she explained. "People underestimate it because its movement seems awkward compared to bishops or rooks. But that unusual L shape gives it power other pieces don't have. Lily raised her hand. Like how it can jump over other pieces? Exactly, Mira smiled. Sometimes the thing that makes you different is your greatest strength. She moved among the students as they practiced creating their own knife forks in practice positions. When she reached Lily's board, she noticed the girl had set up a particularly clever trap. Well done, Mira said warmly. That's very creative thinking. I was trying to tell a story like you said, Lily replied proudly. My knight is the hero who surprises the enemy. From his corner, Lawrence made a small sound, something between a cough and a surprised laugh. When Mira glanced his way, she was startled to see genuine interest on his face. After class ended and the children had left, Lawrence approached her. You're good with them, he said, sounding almost reluctant to admit it. Thank you, Mira replied cautiously. Lawrence hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. I owe you an apology. The night we played, I was rude, condescending. You were, Mira agreed. A hint of a smile touched his lips. Not going to make this easy for me, are you? Should I? No, he admitted. I deserved that knife fork you trapped me in. He paused. The club tournament starts Monday. Are you playing? Mira shook her head. I'm just coaching. Pity. It would have been educational to play you again. Properly this time. He extended his hand. No hard feelings? Mira looked at his offered hand for a moment before shaking it briefly. No hard feelings. After he left, Mira sat alone in the teaching room, thinking about the unexpected exchange. Something had shifted, not just in Lawrence's attitude toward her, but in how she felt about being at the club. For the first time in years, she felt a flicker of belonging. That evening, she took a different route home, getting off the bus several stops early. Her feet carried her to a small park where old men gathered to play chess on concrete tables. Her grandfather had brought her here as a child, before she was old enough for tournament play. An elderly man looked up as she approached his table. Looking for a game, young lady? Mira hesitated only briefly before sitting down. Yes, I am. They played 3 games as the sun set. Mira won all 3, but each victory felt different from any she'd experienced at the club. Here, under the open sky, playing on a chipped board with mismatched pieces, chess felt pure again, uncomplicated by memories or expectations. When she finally arrived home, her grandmother took one look at her face and knew. You played today, she said. Mira nodded. At the park, with strangers. Her grandmother's face creased with a gentle smile. And it felt right. Mira sat at their kitchen table, suddenly exhausted yet somehow lighter. Nani, I'm thinking about entering the club tournament. Her grandmother took her hand, squeezing it with surprising strength. Your grandfather would be proud. Not because you're playing again, but because you're finding your way back to joy. That night, Mira pulled out a small box from the back of her closet, a box she hadn't opened in years. Inside was a tournament chess set her grandfather had given her for her 16th birthday, along with a tattered notebook full of his handwritten chess lessons. On the first page, in his careful script, were words she had forgotten. Chess is life in miniature. We face problems, we analyze, we make decisions, but most importantly, after a defeat, we reset the board and begin again. Mira ran her fingers over the words, tears blurring her vision. I think I'm ready to begin again, grandfather, she whispered. The next morning, she arrived at the club early and went straight to Mr. Phillips's office. I'd like to enter the tournament, she said without preamble. If it's not too late. Mr. Phillips looked up from his paperwork, a slow smile spreading across his face. It's never too late for a knight's move, Ms. Patel. News of Mira's entry into the tournament spread through the Metropolitan Chess Club like wildfire. Members who had barely noticed her during her years of cleaning suddenly knew her name, nodding in recognition when she passed. Some were supportive, others skeptical, but none were indifferent. The cleaning woman who had humbled Lawrence Finch was now a legitimate competitor, and everyone had an opinion about it. The morning before the tournament began, Mira arrived at the club to find her students buzzing with excitement. "Ms. Patel, we made you something," Lily announced, presenting a handmade card signed by all the children. Inside, they had drawn chess pieces and written good luck messages in wobbly handwriting. "We're coming to watch you play," another boy declared proudly. "My dad said we can come after school." Mira felt a lump form in her throat. "Thank you," she said softly. "This means a lot to me." After class, as she was preparing for her cleaning shift, Mr. Phillips approached. "Given your participation in the tournament, we've arranged coverage for your cleaning duties this week." "That's not necessary," Mira protested. "I can still—" "It's done," Mr. Phillips said firmly. "Consider it the club's way of supporting a player." The word player hung in the air between them, not employee or cleaner, but player. Despite herself, Mira felt a warm glow of pride. "There's something else," Mr. Phillips continued, handing her an envelope. "Tournament regulations require proper attire. This should help." Inside the envelope was a gift card to a nearby clothing store. Mira tried to hand it back. "I can't accept this." "It's not charity," Mr. Phillips said. "It's an investment in one of our players. Besides," he added with a rare smile, "it's actually from Lawrence." Mira's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Lawrence? Why would he? He said something about leveling the playing field and no excuses when she beats me again," Mr. Phillips quoted. "I believe that's his version of an apology." That evening, instead of her usual bus ride home, Mira found herself in a clothing store she would normally have walked past without a second glance. With the gift card's generous amount, she selected a simple but elegant black pantsuit and a few modest blouses. Looking at herself in the dressing room mirror, dressed like a professional chess player instead of a cleaner, she barely recognized her reflection. When she arrived home wearing her new clothes, her grandmother's eyes widened. "Look at you," she said in Hindi. "So beautiful, so strong." "It feels strange," Mira admitted, smoothing the unfamiliar fabric. "Like I'm pretending to be someone else." "No," her grandmother corrected gently. "You were pretending before. Now you are remembering who you always were." That night, Mira could barely sleep. She tossed and turned, her mind replaying old games, imagining possible opponents, rehearsing openings she hadn't used in years. By morning, she was exhausted but wired with nervous energy. The tournament's first day brought a crowd to the club. Local chess enthusiasts, club members, and even a reporter from the community newspaper gathered to watch the opening rounds. Mira's first opponent was a middle-aged accountant named Paul, known for his cautious, defensive style. As she sat across from him at the board, tournament clock ticking between them, Mira felt a momentary panic. What was she doing here? She was a cleaner, not a tournament player. Not anymore. Her hands trembled slightly as she made her first move. Paul played exactly as expected, solid, careful chess without taking risks. But as the game progressed, Mira felt something shifting inside her. The familiar patterns of the board began to speak to her again, the pieces moving in a dance she had known since childhood. By the 20th move, her nervousness had disappeared, replaced by a deep concentration she hadn't experienced in years. She won that first game handily, using her knights to break through Paul's defensive wall. As they shook hands afterward, he smiled ruefully. "I heard about your game with Lawrence, but I thought people were exaggerating. They weren't." Mira's second game that day was against a young law student who played aggressive, attacking chess. This match proved more challenging, stretching into a tense endgame where Mira's experience finally gave her the edge. By the end of the first day, Mira was undefeated and would advance to the second round. As she gathered her things to leave, she found Tom waiting. "2 wins," he said, grinning. "Impressive start." "I got lucky," Mira demurred. "That wasn't luck. That was skill." Tom fell into step beside her. "How does it feel to be back?" Mira considered the question. Familiar. Scary, right? She glanced at him. All of those at once. I noticed your students came to watch. They made me a card. Mira couldn't keep the smile from her face. They've never seen me as just the cleaning lady. To them, I've always been their chess teacher. Kids are smart that way, Tom observed. They see people for who they are, not what they do for a living. When they reached the bus stop, Tom hesitated. Some of us are having dinner to celebrate the first day. Nothing fancy, just pizza at the place around the corner. Would you like to join? The old Mira would have declined immediately, retreating to the safety of her routine. But the woman who had spent the day playing tournament chess found herself nodding. I'd like that. The pizza place was crowded with chess players, the air filled with excited post-game analysis and friendly arguments about strategy. Mira sat somewhat awkwardly at first, unused to socializing with the club members. But as the evening progressed, she found herself drawn into their conversations, even offering her own insights on a particularly tricky endgame position. Where did you learn to play? One woman asked her. Your style is unusual. Classic foundation, but with these creative tactical flourishes. Who trained you? Mira tensed, the familiar wall starting to rise. But then she thought of her grandfather's notebook, of his belief in her, and something gave way. My grandfather taught me, she said, the words coming easier than expected. He learned in India as a boy and brought his love of the game with him when he immigrated here. He trained me from the time I could recognize the pieces. He must have been very good, the woman said. He was? Mira smiled at the memory. He never had the opportunity to play in tournaments himself. He worked 2 jobs to support his family, but he made sure I had that chance. And you? Did you play in tournaments before? Another player asked. Mira nodded, choosing her words carefully. Yes, when I was younger. It's been many years since I competed. She was grateful when the conversation shifted to tomorrow's matchups, sparing her from further questions about her past. Some wounds were still too fresh to expose completely. Later that night, after returning home, Mira pulled out her grandfather's notebook again. She had been avoiding the final pages, his notes from her last tournament, the one they never reached. Now she turned to them with trembling fingers. The page was filled with his neat handwriting, analysis of her potential opponents, suggestions for opening variations, reminders of her strengths. At the bottom, he had written, "Remember, chess is not about avoiding mistakes. Everyone makes them. It is about how we recover from them. This is true on the board and in life." Tears blurred Mira's vision. How had she forgotten this lesson? For 10 years, she had been unable to recover from the tragedy, frozen in her guilt. But chess itself held the answer. After a devastating loss, we reset the board and begin again. The tournament's second day brought Mira's most challenging opponent yet, Wei Zhang himself. As one of the club's top-rated players, he was expected to win the entire tournament. "I hope you will not hold back out of respect for an old man," Mr. Zhang said with a twinkle in his eye as they sat down to play. "Only if you promise the same," Mira replied. Their game drew the largest crowd. Even Mira's students had been allowed to miss part of their school day to watch, their excited faces visible at the edge of the spectator area. The match was a masterclass in strategic chess, with neither player making obvious errors. Mr. Zhang played with the precision and depth that had made him a formidable opponent for decades. But Mira met him move for move, her knights once again becoming the key to her strategy. In a critical middle game position, she sacrificed a bishop, a move that caused gasps from the onlookers. Mr. Zhang studied the board for a long time before accepting the sacrifice, his expression revealing his understanding that he had walked into a trap. 3 moves later, Mira's knight delivered a devastating fork, simultaneously threatening his king and queen. The game lasted another 20 moves, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. When Mr. Zhang finally tipped over his king in resignation, the room erupted in applause. "Beautifully played," he said, offering his hand. "Your grandfather taught you well." Mira froze. I never mentioned my grandfather to you. Mr. Zhang's eyes crinkled with a smile. You didn't have to. I recognized his influence in your play from the first time I saw you beat Lawrence. The knight maneuver you used, it was a variation of the Patel knight trap. The what? Mira asked, confused. The Patel knight trap, named after Rajiv Patel, a brilliant player who never achieved the recognition he deserved because he couldn't compete internationally. Mr. Zhang's eyes widened as understanding dawned. He was your grandfather, wasn't he? Rajiv Patel? Mira nodded slowly, shocked to hear her grandfather's name spoken with such respect. You knew of him? Any serious student of chess knows of Rajiv Patel, Mr. Zhang said. His games were published in chess journals, though few knew the man himself. He studied her face. You have his eyes, and his gift for seeing patterns others. Miss. As they cleared the board, Mr. Zhang spoke quietly so only she could hear. He would be proud today, not just of your victory but of your courage to play again. Mira looked across the room to where her students were watching, their faces shining with admiration. Beyond them stood Tom, Lawrence, and Mr. Phillips, people who had seen something in her that she had hidden away for too long. Yes, she whispered. I think he would. The final day of the tournament arrived with unexpected fanfare. Word had spread about the former cleaning woman who was now dominating the competition, and about her connection to Rajiv Patel, a name that resonated with serious chess enthusiasts. A local news reporter had even shown up, hoping to interview the woman behind the story. Mira declined the interview, uncomfortable with the attention. I'm just here to play chess, she told Mr. Phillips when he relayed the request. You're more than that now, he replied. You're an inspiration, especially to the children. Looking across the club to where her students were setting up practice boards, Mira felt a wave of responsibility. What message would she send them if she hid from this moment? If she taught them to love chess but not to embrace recognition when it came? Maybe after the final match, she conceded. If it goes well. The tournament's structure meant that Mira would face Lawrence in the final round, a rematch of the game that had started everything. As they prepared to play, Lawrence offered his hand. Good luck, he said, and seemed to mean it. You too, Mira replied. This Lawrence was different from the arrogant man who had challenged her weeks ago. He played thoughtfully with respect for her abilities. The game stretched on, complex and hard-fought, neither player giving ground easily. The crowd watching them grew as other matches finished, until it seemed the entire club had gathered around their table. In a critical middle position, Lawrence surprised her with an unexpected bishop sacrifice, a move straight out of her own playbook. Mira paused, studying the board carefully before accepting the piece. 3 moves later, she realized he had laid a trap for her knight, using her own tactics against her. Well played, she murmured as she carefully navigated around the danger. Lawrence nodded slightly, his concentration unbroken. The game continued, tense and balanced, until they reached an endgame where Mira held a slight advantage. 2 knights against Lawrence's bishop and pawn. Knights versus bishop endgames were notoriously tricky, requiring precise calculation and patient maneuvering. Mira could feel sweat beading on her forehead as she plotted her path to victory. This was chess at its purest, a mental battle where nothing mattered except the 64 squares before her. After 15 more moves of careful positioning, Mira created a winning combination. Lawrence studied the board for a long moment before tipping over his king in resignation. Congratulations, he said, offering his hand again. The better player won. The room erupted in applause. Lily and the other children rushed forward, their faces shining with excitement. You did it, Miss Patel, you won. Mr. Phillips presented her with a small trophy and the modest cash prize that came with the club championship. As cameras flashed, and people crowded around to congratulate her, Mira felt oddly calm. The chaos around her seemed distant compared to the quiet certainty she felt inside, the knowledge that she had found her way back to where she belonged. Later, after giving a brief, shy interview to the local reporter, Mira found Tom waiting for her. Champion, he said with a warm smile. How does it feel? Overwhelming, she admitted. I never expected any of this when I came to work here 3 years ago. Life has a way of surprising us. He hesitated. Speaking of surprises, there's someone here who wants to meet you. Tom led her to a corner of the club where an elderly man waited. He was tall and thin, with sharp eyes that assessed her immediately. Mira Patel, he said, his voice carrying a hint of an Eastern European accent. I am Viktor Kozlov. I played against your grandfather in an exhibition match in 1982. Mira's eyes widened. You knew my grandfather? He beat me soundly, Viktor said with a chuckle. Using that night trap that seems to run in your family. When I read about this tournament in the chess newsletter, I had to come see if Rajiv Patel's granddaughter played with the same fire. And? Mira asked softly. Even more fire, Viktor declared. Your grandfather would be proud, but he would also ask, what next? The question caught Mira off guard. What do you mean? Club championships are just the beginning. There are open tournaments, state championships, national competitions. Viktor leaned forward. Your grandfather never had those opportunities, but you do. The thought of larger tournaments, of traveling to compete, sent a wave of anxiety through Mira. I don't know if I'm ready for that. No one ever feels ready, Viktor said with a shrug. We jump and we grow wings on the way down. Later that evening, as the club emptied and the excitement of the day faded, Mira found herself alone in the teaching room. She set up a board and recreated the final position of her game with Lawrence, studying where she could have played more efficiently. Zhang found her there. Still working, even after victory? Especially after victory, Mira replied. There's always room to improve. Mr. Zhang nodded approvingly. The mark of a true player. He sat across from her. The youth program is expanding. We've received calls from 3 schools wanting to start chess clubs since your story appeared online. Already? Mira was surprised. People love an underdog story, Mr. Zhang said. The cleaner who became a chess champion, it gives people hope. I'm hardly a champion, Mira demurred. It was just a club tournament. For now. Mr. Zhang studied her. We would like you to become the full-time director of our youth program. Leave the cleaning behind and focus on teaching and playing. The club will sponsor you in regional tournaments. Mira's hand froze over the night she was about to move. I don't know what to say. Say yes, came a voice from the doorway. Tom stood there, smiling. Sorry for eavesdropping, but he's right. You belong at the board, not behind a mop. Mira looked between them, overwhelmed by the offer. I need to think about it. Talk to my grandmother. Of course, Mr. Zhang said. Take your time. But in her heart, Mira already knew her answer. Chess had reclaimed her, just as surely as she had reclaimed it. That night, when she told her grandmother about the offer, the old woman's eyes filled with tears. Your grandfather always said chess would give you a better life, she said in Hindi. He saw your gift before anyone else. I'm scared, Mira admitted. What if I fail? What if I'm not as good as they think? Her grandmother took her hands. Then, you will learn and grow stronger. Losing is not failing. Giving up, that is the only true failure. The next morning, Mira arrived at the club earlier than usual. She found Mr. Phillips already in his office. I'd like to accept the position, she said without preamble, and the tournament sponsorship. His face broke into a broad smile. Excellent. We'll start the paperwork today. As she turned to leave, he added, Oh, and Ms. Patel, we'll need your tournament playing name for the registrations. Mira paused. For years, she had hidden from her past, from her family legacy. Now it was time to embrace it fully. Mira Rajiv Patel, she said firmly. My full name. That afternoon, she taught her class with renewed energy. The children, still excited from her victory, hung on her every word. Chess is more than just a game, she told them. It's a way of thinking, of solving problems, of understanding that every choice has consequences. Lily raised her hand. Ms. Patel, will you teach us that night trick you used to win? Mira smiled. It's called the Patel Knight Trap. My grandfather invented it, and yes, I'll teach it to you. But first, you need to understand why it works. As she moved pieces on the demonstration board, explaining the concepts of space, tempo, and coordination, Mira felt a sense of continuity, a thread connecting her past to her present and stretching into the future. She was not just teaching chess moves but passing on her grandfather's legacy to a new generation. After class, she found Tom waiting. Lunch? He suggested. To celebrate your new position? Mira nodded, feeling a lightness she hadn't experienced in years. As they walked together through the club, she noticed Lawrence setting up for a game with Mr. Zhang. He caught her eye and gave a respectful nod, which she returned. Not friends, perhaps, but competitors who had found mutual respect. Another kind of relationship that chess made possible. Outside, the spring sunshine warmed her face. A year ago, even a month ago, Mira would have hurried through these streets with her head down, rushing between jobs, between responsibilities. Now she walked with her head up, seeing possibilities rather than burdens. What are you thinking about? Tom asked. Knights, Mira replied with a small smile. How they move in unexpected ways. How sometimes the path forward isn't straight. Like life, Tom observed. Exactly like life. Mira thought of all the twists her own path had taken. The tragedy that had derailed her, the years of hiding, and now this unexpected renaissance. My grandfather used to say that nights remind us that sometimes we need to move sideways before we can move forward. As they walked, Mira felt her grandfather's presence beside her, not as a weight of guilt and grief, but as a gentle guiding hand. She had honored his memory not by abandoning chess, but by finding her way back to it. The journey wasn't over. There would be more tournaments, more challenges, more opportunities to fail and to succeed. But for the first time in 10 years, Mira Patel was moving forward, one knight's move at a time.